Evening, everyone. How are we? Paul, Brad, and Aaron. How are we? Excuse me while I kill the... You're not late. I literally just started the stream, Yowie. I am the one who's late. Had some unforeseen delays this morning. Wow, yeah. Very late. How terrible. Morning, Daniel. How are we? Fair enough, Daniel. Thank you for being safe while driving. So we finally flipped the Sabre around and we're going to start working on the blade. It looks like I can't work on the shoulder of the blade because it doesn't fit in the entrance of my post box, so I might actually have to switch out to the bigger forge. Oh, it's officially died. Right, well, I'll have to put that inside then. Hello, Walt. How are you? While I'm waiting for that to heat up, I'm going to flame blast these engraving hammerheads. Because I had them in the oven, but my oven has completely crapped out now. The joys of running toaster ovens into the ground. Anyway. So these 5 engraving hammerheads will go with the 5 sets of gravers that I heat treated recently. I didn't get my electric kiln running, unfortunately. I had to do it all with the forge. The electric kiln's taking too damn long. These have all been coated in linseed oil. We're supposed to bake on in the oven, but the oven electrodes have completely crapped out. Doing it old school. Now I just have to finish the faces and make handles for them. Oh, no worries, Jeff. Hello, Caitlin. Hello, Jared. How are we? It's all good, Caitlin. I'm just waiting on parts, to be honest. That is my problem right now. Parts. Hey, Trail Dust. I'm going to have to use the big forge. Oh well. We'll start out with the little one. I'll get the big one running. Thankfully, it's nice and overcast today, so I don't have to worry about too much about it. I believe so, Caitlin? I can't remember. Your arm's already sore. Yeah, I can bet, Jared. I can bet. Well, of course it is. It's not plugged in. Why would it be? That would be smart. I'll have to double check. If I didn't reply to it, then there's a good chance I didn't. For some reason, I don't get notifications for Patreon messages, weirdly. I need an oven for this? An oven for what, exactly? For which part do I need an oven? I mean, you're not wrong, I do need an oven, but I'm interested to know what part of this I need an oven for. Yep, no worries. Shall do. All good, Jared. This month has been terrible for finances everywhere, apparently. So yeah, all good. Definitely terrible on mine. You know that month where you get all your bills in one? Fantastic. Yeah, apparently it's for me, it's December as well, Caitlin. They all came in last week. $1,000 worth. More than. Like 12. Not a good time to have been spending a whole bunch of time making swords that I'm not selling. No one ever accused me of being smart. Hey Xavier, how you going? Hey Wayne, how you going? Sorry we're a bit late on the stream today. Some slack bastard slept in. These YouTubers, man. Can't trust them to be on time for anything. Sense in running two forges. Bonjour, les cargos. How you doing? Ça va, ça va. Hey, Corey. Hello, Zach. How are we? Haven't got a set of tongs that holds around corners, so it makes life a little interesting. I kind of hate you, Corey, for asking that question. There you go, Wayne. Hey, Bobby. Konnichiwa. Ryan, how you going? O genki desu ka? Yes, Wayne is very much not an Aussie, that's for sure. I haven't been practicing my Japanese yami, unfortunately. I did study for about like 3 months, but I kind of dropped off and I really need to get back to it. And I was only pulling the piss. I don't actually speak Japanese with an Australian accent. That would be cursed. Herbal tea. It's nice. I always appreciate practice. Yeah, I do not have enough knowledge to do a full tutorial in Japanese. I can say hello, how are you? I can say sorry. I can count to 10. And I've forgotten half the other shit that I learned. Some length going. Yeah, I can say several different kinds of knives. Making Venice jerk. Nice. Don't do counting. True. Yeah, I started learning Japanese from a lot of knife tutorials and stuff like that I was watching at the time, and then decided that I should probably study actual Japanese. So I picked it up on Duolingo. But also was practicing French at the same time. Made for some interesting pronunciation issues because, practicing French accent and Japanese accent at the same time makes for some interesting pronunciation. Hey, Blueberries, how you going? Jared hunts with everything. Sorry. Bow, shotgun, musket. 80% of each pack. Yeah, fair enough. I'd do the same. Piece of jerky. Piece of jerky. Little fine reference for anyone who knows. Yik yik, as they say. There you go. Never heard Japanese in a French accent. Sorry, I just turned off the mic for a second. Didn't want you to hear that. I think I'm coming down with another cold, which is wonderful. Teak knife handles. I mean, not bad. Teak is one of those things where it's like a fairly straight grain wood, so it looks like every other straight grain wood handle. English warbow, yeah, nice. From memory, I've used teak a little bit. It is a little soft. I would probably want it stabilized if it was for a hard wearing knife. It's definitely not COVID, Sabre, thankfully. Definitely not COVID. Welcome to Western Australia. $150-year-old teak. Nice. It's nice when the stuff has history. So for those of you who watched my most recent Chalk Talks video, you will know what kind of distal taper I'll be putting on this. Then if you don't, and you did watch the video, then you obviously didn't watch the video well enough. Boat knives out of it. Nice. Hey, Kevin. Deck of a boat built in 1910. Ooh. Two Chalk Talks behind. I'm disappointed. Hello, Dan. Yes, I see you. What are you doing? That's what I thought. It depends, Kevin, but normally you're going to be looking at something like chromoly, so 41 or 4340. Sounds like a good plan, Gory. Watched it 3 times. 4130. Okay. It's not always necessary that manganese is going to be. Here you is. Honestly, the chromium is more important in a lot of cases in that environment. Chromium and molybdenum, shock absorption and wear resistance. That's up to you, Trotus. I'm cool with whatever. That is entirely up to you. So Wayne, given that you've watched the video several times, what kind of distal taper am I putting on the sword blade? What of the 3 types of distal taper will I be using? This is your pop quiz. And for those of you who haven't watched it, what are the 3 types of distal taper? I'm interested to know if anyone knows without having watched my content. Because it gives me a feel of how useful my information is. If I'm teaching you something you didn't already know, then I am providing value. However, if everyone already knows what I'm teaching you, then what's the point? Is that a Roy I see showing up? Long, medium, and short. Close. Hello, Roy. How are you? I like saying molybdenum. Yes, it is fun. Molybdenum. Da, 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 da. Yeah, dozer blade from a bulldozer, yeah, correct. Compound, indeed. There you are. People who've watched this video. Now you can spread my heart through too. No one said or chanted the F word. This is true. But Roy doesn't need flux to be, summoned to my channel, at least. Roy is always welcome here. Sharp, flat, and pointy. I mean, yeah, okay, close there, Roy. Very close. No. No. Good guess, though. No, Ryan, no. Oh dear, that's not good, Paul. Round over on square tapers. Compound straight and curve, not quite. It's gonna rain, I don't know. It's apparently gonna rain today. Here, but it's a little bit warmer here than it is over there, I would wager. Oh. Where are you at, Xavier? You've got slush. That's perfect. That is perfect for Roy. Someone should get Roy that for Christmas. So the three types of distal taper, for those of you who haven't watched my video yet, for shame, are compound, flat, and stepped distal tapers. Just keep guessing, Ryan. Down the road from, that's right, yeah. That's correct, I remember now. Spoilers indeed. Stepped is not for swords. Compound is for swords. Compound or flat. I mean, you could do a flat if you were doing something like a tulwar or a shamshir. Although even then, I would suggest a compound Distal Taper. I have a feeling I know what you think it needs, Roy. Hey, Matt. How you going? I have good news, Matthew. Your your gravers are heat treated, sharpened, and the hammerhead is ready for handling. Yeah, I figured, Roy. I figured. I'm shocked, I'm stunned that you would suggest such a thing. How unusual for you. Plane was delayed 48 hours. Ah, fair enough. Yeah, delayed flights are always a pain. Fully engraved scroll. Totally. Well, good night to your son, Caitlin. Hey, Joel. How you going? Yeah, no, I'm not fully engraving this one either. Sorry, Roy. Sorry to disappoint, my friend. Needs more Roy. Yeah, well. Hey, Alex. How you going? Yes, there's a me. Which is why I only replied a one-word answer to your texts. It's only about 24 degrees today, but the humidity's sitting at about 89%, so just sweating buckets. Quite happy with the length I'm getting on this Sabre though. Quite windy, yeah. Yes, gotta hide the flux. Alex hasn't helped me with my oven yet, Matt. The oven's still not running. I ended up getting sick and tired of waiting for parts and making you wait for parts as much as anything. So I ended up tuning the forge. Not as reliable, and it was a lot of pain, but I got them all done. There was some warping issues with them. None of the gravers are now straight anymore, which is a bit of a pain, but it's something I have to deal with, unfortunately. $40 thick. Nice. Axes. Axes, hammers. 40 millimeters. So like inch and what's that? That's like inch and a half. Thick with 3 C's. Well, that's a pretty good suggestion there, Kevin. 1 5/8, yeah, so just over an inch and a half. The thickest I've got's 25 mil, so inch thick. And that stuff's a pain in the ass to move. I hope so too, Alex. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I have yet to do any work on the buoy that I forged for demonstrative purposes. Roy's answer to everything is more scrolls. If he was deep thought, it would literally just be the answer to life, the universe, and everything is more scrolls. Any fellow Hitchhiker's Guides fans? That's true there, Alex, that's true. Be back in a second, just going to fill this up. It's warm in here. Very warm. Hello, Janet. Displeasure is noted and ignored. Yeah, she does. She just did actually, Wayne. Correct. Oof. This is going to be a nice Sabre when it's all told. Switching hammer time to the mountain hammer. It's already got some nice balance to it. I'm very happy. Complete my grease monkey look. Tornadoes are coming. Hello to Kentucky. How you going, Chris? Fine and dandy. It's going to be a fairly plain one, Roy. It's actually going to be forge finished. That's the idea, at least. It's been forged integral, so I figure a forge finished blade and a forged hilt would look quite snazzy. I am currently using my English Cutlass hammer, my mountain English Cutlass hammer. The reason it's called the mountain hammer is because it's got a mountain seam on it. The last thing that I engraved with that chisel set that I am giving away in the buoy competition. And I've just heat treated all of my new gravers. So soon I shall be getting back to engraving again. Looking forward to it. Originally I intended to put a Yellman on this, but I'm not going to. Decided against it. I'm going to draw out the blade nearer the hilt a little bit more as well. Just refining the point at this point. Hey James, how you going? Making a Sabre. Venison snack sticks. Hey Ben. Good old tornado season. Thought that was in high summer though. Am I wrong? I mean, I know our hurricane season's on in summer. Hurricanes and tornadoes are two different things, although caused by similar weather systems. Hallelujah. Doing all right, Ben. Yourself? Duck season, Kevin. Should make a Sabre out of it. Yeah, it's a good idea, actually. I hadn't thought of that. Oh, fun times, James. Very fun times. Keep your heart at work. All right. Move a little further back. Sabre is definitely getting a little less lumpy. Thanks, Oppo. Glad you're enjoying them. It is the mountain hammer indeed, Wayne. Wayne's favorite hammer. Of mine, at least. Going to sort of be Briquette Saber sized. Those of you who are on my most recent live stream will know what a Briquette Saber looks like. Twitch live stream, that is. A little bit overboard with Preston in that area, unfortunately. That's alright, fix it. We have the technology. Santa's bringing you a real hammer? Nice. Definitely getting beat into shape, yes. Speaking of hammers, I'll have 6 more available very, very soon. 4 of these diagonal panes and 2 English Cutlass hammers. And I already have 5 more billets chopped up, ready to go. So there are like a billion different kinds of sabers, depending on like what period and what location. The definition for a saber is fairly ubiquitous. Basically, it just means curved, single-edged, single-handed sword. But even then, that's not entirely true, because there is the Swiss saber, which is a two-handed saber. Basically a long sword with a single edge. Most of the time when referring to sabers, you're referring to 19th century swords. Anything previous to 18th and 19th. Anything previous to the 18th and 19th century is normally a falchion. In period, given this length, this one would probably be considered a hanger rather than a saber. But then the French designated their briquette hanger actually a briquette saber. So it's just a short saber. So if you're looking at like the 19th century, so the period of like Napoleon and all that kind of stuff, then there are regulation standards for certain sabers. So like the 1796 light cavalry saber has a very specific design that you can follow. The Briquette saber has the same, there are a number of different saber types that have regulation standards, especially military sabers. Previous to like 1796 and around there, not many militaries had a regulation for sword. So you would have something that was like commonly used, but not regulation. So there was no standard sizes or anything like that. But yeah, from 1796 onwards, especially in the British tradition, there were regulation standards for all swords. And so the measurements and all that kind of stuff are freely available on the internet. The French, it's much the same. they had regulation standards for all of their swords from 1796 onwards. No, I'm not doing the bevels right now. I'm just finalizing the distal taper, getting my blade thicknesses correct. I'm not sure that I will bevel this. If I'm being perfectly honest, I may actually just leave it full thickness and stock remove the bevels. And the reason for that is because it'll make it easier to heat treat than if I forge the bevels in. The only downside to that is I will lose some mass in the blade, which is why I'm pushing the taper back a little bit more to bring some of this thick material forward. So I have quite a bit of material back here at the quillins that needn't be there. Oh, that sucks, Wayne. You that NCO halberd. Well, the NCOs didn't have halberd. I mean, it depends on which military you're talking about, but the sergeants had the spontoon, which was a boar spear, basically. Yeah, by the Napoleonic era, you weren't really talking about halberds very often, unless you were talking about like horse guards, but then they weren't really combat soldiers. No, I mean single edge is in not double-edged, so it wasn't an arming sword or a broadsword. So all sabers are curved. Any sword that isn't curved is a sword. So in the British tradition, at least, if you have a single-edged blade that isn't in a basket hilt, if it's a basket hilt, you have a backsword and a broadsword. So you have a basket-hilted backsword and a basket-hilted broadsword, which are both straight swords with basket hilts. If it doesn't have a basket hilt, if it has a stirrup hilt or a single knuckle bow or 3-bar, then you have a saber, which is curved, or a sword, which is straight. So that's why you have, in 1796, when the regulations came, you had the 1796 light cavalry saber, which was a fairly curved sword that had a stirrup hilt. And then you had the heavy cavalry sword, which was a straight-bladed, single-edged sword that was actually used by Sharp in the Sharp series. A katana would be considered a saber, yes, technically, by the British tradition of that period. And actually, a lot of period accounts of Victorian Englishmen coming across Japanese swordsmen would say that they used a two-handed saber. What's the difference between a cutlass and a saber? So it depends. Regulation cutlasses of the Napoleonic era were actually straight, and most cutlasses in the British Navy were dead straight. They were slightly shorter, very slightly. Like, I mean, regulation infantry saber length was about 32 inches. Regulation cutlass was about 30 inches. Cutlasses use bowl hilts rather than stirrup hilts. And the main thing about a cutlass is it's used on a boat. If it's issued to you by the Navy, then it's a cutlass. If the same sword was issued to you by the Army, it would be called a hanger. But the key difference was the bowl hilt. Bowl hilts were not common on British infantry swords of the period. You had stirrup hilts like this one, although this is not a typical British stirrup hilt. A typical British stirrup hilt would be a P shape. So you would have the typical British 1796 light cav saber hilts, which then became like the standard saber hilt for all British military sabers. Would have a back strap like that, normally a ferrule and a wasp-waisted handle, and then the guard would come out, down, and then out like that. And that was your standard saber design. And then normally you'd have a rear quillin like that, and your blade there with your fuller. That was your standard British saber hilt for most infantry officers and cavalry sabers. Oh, nice, Domestos. If you go through the British Manual of Arms, they very much differentiate between sword and saber. So, for instance, in 1908, when the 1908P patent cavalry sword was developed, a lot of people call it a saber because it has that bowl hilt look of a saber, but it's actually a sword because it's dead straight, and it was basically blunt because it was more of a lance than a sword. It was basically a single-handed lance, and the reason for that is because they were trained to only use the point on horseback, because using the edge was pointless. By the Napoleonic War, using the edge from horseback was basically frowned upon by both militaries because it wasn't as effective as using the point. It was Napoleon who was quoted as, when viewing a cavalry training regime, watching them cut at the opponent, said, "Pas le sabre, pointe, pointe," which is, don't cut, use the point. Ottoman tillage, nice. New bootlace, no new boots. Well, the thing is that lances existed, Domestos. So you had cavalry lances, but you couldn't carry a lance and a carbine or a rifle. So it was much easier to have a sword or basically a point on a stick, like a pointy steel stick with a handle, that you could carry in a sheath and still be able to fire your carbine from horseback. Because you had to have two hands to use a carbine, even into World War I, because you're talking about bolt-action carbines. So, you'd be riding your charge and bang, bang, reloading every time. And then once you closed to quarters, you could draw your sword and be ready to charge your opponent. If you had a lance, on the other hand, it's really hard to steer up your lance in a place where you can then operate two hands. Well, again, short javelin, where are you going to store it? Where are you going to put it? It's also less mobile, and also provides less protection. So a 1908 patent Sabre, I'll come back in a second. So all I have is my 1845 patent Cutlass, but basically the bowls were the same, although the cutouts are actually for weight reduction. This would have been solid. But in cavalry, this is how you would hold your sword on the charge. Point the edge up, point down, thumb on the spine of the handle, and you would lower the point into your opponent, and then as you come through, it would just pull out. So the bowl provided your protection. So if I'm riding in on horseback against another opponent and they come at me with a cut, then I've got this protecting my hand and my head. Whereas if I had just a javelin, I have no protection. I just have a stick. And with a stick, if I am to hold this out, sword comes down on that hand, I lose my hand. All right, Roy, see you later. So yeah, by the period of 1908, when you're talking about the World War I, Charge of the Light Brigade, all that kind of stuff. Oh, not Charge of the Light Brigade, that was Crimea. But Bathsheba, the Australian light horse, they were using 1908 patent swords, and yeah, they would just ride in like this, drop the point into their opponent, it would go through their chest, and then they would drag them around as they rode past. It would come out and they would go back on point. You see in Warhorse, the movie, they actually charge as properly, but then suddenly they turn around and start slashing at the guys on the ground, which is pointless because the edges on 1908 patent swords were basically blunt. Like the troopers' versions didn't even have edges in many cases. If you were an officer, you could pay someone to put an edge on it. And Matt Easton has a really good example of an Appleseed edged 1908 patent cavalry sword. But yeah, in the period of Roeth and the fighting styles that I teach in HEMA, you had curved sabers for your light cavalry, and heavy swords were straight. And they were only just starting to realize that the edge wasn't half as lethal as the point is. And it wasn't until the Afghan wars of 1845 and beyond that they realized that the point is really the way to win sword engagement. Edges just don't do as much damage. Edges will keep you safer, but edges will not kill as easily as a point will. And that's why the 1796 light cavalry saber was traded out for the 1821 patent, which is a much straighter saber. It's still curved slightly, but curved much like this Cutlass is. That very, very slight curve. And so they started concentrating on the point, which is when you started to see Angelo and John Musgrave Waite was like 1880, but later period sources had a thumb up grip. And they went from a hanging guard, which is Roeth. This is a hanging guard from Roeth. They went into second, which was a much more point extended guard in order to facilitate the lunge. Rather than that kind of thing, which is why the rapier is superior sword. I mean, I would argue that there's no such thing as the superior sword in that instance, in that context. I have fought saber against rapier, and it just comes down to the fighting style. And, context. And honestly, rapiers are great as against a lot of weapon systems. I'm a side sword fighter. I love rapiers and spadarato. But yeah. And if I had to choose a weapon to go into a duel with, I would choose probably a rapier, because I suck with a longsword. Two-handed swords and me just don't agree. For some reason, as we have found out, my fellow instructor is a longsword fighter through and through. He hates single-handed swords, which is why we work so well together, because I teach all the single-handed sword stuff, and he teaches all the longsword stuff. And I was actually sparring with him last night, and we did a couple of rounds of saber and I kept winning, and then we did a couple of rounds of longsword and he kept winning. We are evenly matched. And then we sparred some saber versus longsword, And we were kind of evenly matched. Like, you can fight Sabre versus longsword. Don't let people tell you can't. You just have to know how to fight. I've already told Patreon that I'll be filming some sword work. All right, see you later, Kevin. Thanks, Damascus. It's not great. It's just a shit rag. All right, Xavier, see you later. But yeah, I plan on doing some sword work videos for my students, and I'll also upload them to Patreon. But I mean, you pretty much, Aaron. Like in most swordsmanship, it comes down to the fighter, not always the weapon. It does sometimes come down to the weapon if it comes down to the person if the person wielding it has trained with that weapon. If you put a fighter who's really used to single-handed swordsmanship and you give them a longsword, they're going to be at a disadvantage against someone who's trained longsword. Now, I've mostly, for a long time, I trained mostly Spada or side sword and buckler, and recently have moved into Roeth and Sabre and Cutlass. But those two are fairly interconnected because they are single-handed sword systems, and so I don't have to worry about so much transitioning to two-handed swordsmanship. But it's still a learning exercise. But yeah, I would carry my Sabre against most weapon systems. Most, not all. And rapier is actually, it depends on the form that someone chooses in rapier. For instance, if I was to fight anyone, Sabre versus rapier, I would hope that I'm fighting someone who's practiced Capoferro rapier. If I'm fighting a Spaniard, then I'm in more trouble. Whereas as a rapierist, if you're a Capoferro fighter, you're actually probably really good against other rapiers. Like, Morozzo wasn't a rapier fighter, he was a side sword fighter. Although a lot of people use Morozzo as a rapier manual for like SCA combat and stuff like that, because it somewhat mimics the Spanish style. Dante de Algocchi and all that kind of stuff really had that passing footwork that the Spaniards really loved. Capoferro was much more linear. Still prefer a katana. I mean, you can have a katana. I'm happy with that. Yeah, that's fair enough, Caitlin. All right, Bobby. See you later, mate. Hand and a half sword is called a long sword. Although hand and a half sword would technically be a long sword blade, a long sword handle with an arming sword blade, so it'd be a shorter long sword. Katana is just a longsword without the hand protection, correct? That's the idea, Lecago. I mean, I would argue that one, Caitlin, but Destrezza, yeah. I mean, the problem with studying Destrezza is that there isn't really a manual on it, like, so much. A lot of it's been recreated through Italian sources and stuff like that. Maya is a Salé form, he's not a combat form. But yes, similar. The issue with katana is the lack of hand protection, basically. As a sabre, I love fighting against katana fighters. Because 99% of the time, I'm just going to take your hands. And if you don't have hands, you can't wield a katana. And even if you're using like an aginata or something like that, you're using a slightly longer katana, 36-inch, thereabouts, probably the longest katanas you're going to get. My 32-inch saber is still going to have more reach than you because I'm using it single-handed. And actually, period accounts from British swordsmen in the Victorian period fighting against Japanese pirates, or Japanese ronin who were hired as pirates in that period, quite often said that they were very fluid swordsmen, like they were very pretty swordsmen to look at, but they weren't actually that effective. The British held the Japanese swordsman in high regard for his artistic style, but didn't rate them as swordsmen. Lichtenau, yeah. Yeah, because the issue with katana, and I mean I studied kendo for a little while in Edo. The issue is basically you've got a stick, right? You've got a tsuba, which is a fairly small disc guard, and most of your guards in kendo and stuff like that are going to be extended. They're going to be quite long guards, like this. This is Jodan no Kamae, and then you've got Shudan no Kamae, which is up above your head. I can't remember the name for this one, but you're basically a tail guard. And the problem with those is that, this one just leaves you open. So most of the time you're going to be guarding in Jodan no Kamae, which is, if you watch kendo, this is pretty much all they do, is Jodan no Kamae. And they'll be this back and forth, and then they'll come in for a men, and they will just snap that cut forward, and then lift their hands and step backwards. And the men is aimed at the top of the head. A standard Cutlass guard that was taught by John Pingle Green and Roeth, hanging guard. Go for it. Attack that men, please. Because the first thing that happens, it goes plink off my sword, and I go bling and snap your neck off. But even if you don't, even if you decide to be a katana fighter who's fighting point work, which is very unusual in katana, in Iedo and kendo. But if you decide to fight point work, all I need to do is take a traverse off my right foot and attack your sword hand as it comes through. Hey, Jack. Yeah, if you're good with if you're good with a two-handed sword, you're good with most two-handed swords. If you're good with a single sword, you're normally good with most single swords. So yeah, longsword tends to signify a sword that is two-handed and double-edged, but and as I pointed out earlier, katana would technically be a two-handed saber. Like the Swiss saber, but katana is fought more like longsword. It's fought in a longsword style, as would the Swiss saber be, I would imagine. Although there are no sources for fighting with the Swiss saber. We can take a measured guess that is how it would go down. The hand and a half sword is otherwise known as a bastard sword because it is a bastard between the blade length of a single-handed sword and the handle length and guard length of a two-handed sword. So bastard swords will normally have around a 33, 34-inch blade, which is quite short for a longsword, and have a long sword length handle, which is designed for two hands. Basically, hand-and-a-half swords are the bastard child no one really wants, because you lose range, but you don't really gain anything. You don't gain maneuverability. Like, people have argued that hand-and-a-half swords are more maneuverable. I would argue that that's bullshit, because long sword blades aren't that cumbersome, even at 40 inches. The one advantage that a hand-and-a-half sword would give you over a longsword would be that you could technically carry it a lot easier in a scabbard, because, you know, less blade length. But what do you fucking do? You're better off just carrying a longsword, to be honest. And if you come up against a Capoferro rapierist or anyone who studied English rapier, then they're going to be wielding a blade 46 to 48 inches long. No. So a bastard sword and an arming sword have the same length of blade. So they have, neither has more length. The only reason that you would have more reach is because you have a longer handle, so therefore you could single hand the pommel of the hand-and-a-half sword to get an additional reach advantage. But two-handed swords always have less reach than a single-handed sword will. The reason for that is fairly obvious. If I am two-handed, this is my reach. Single-handed. Two-handed, two-handed, single-handed. Two-handed, single-handed. Same sword, I'm losing about 6 inches of reach, and that's because this limits me, whereas this does not. I mean, the balance doesn't really matter if you're using two hands on it. It'll be faster in the tip either way. I mean, like, it depends on the bastard sword. The thing is that once you get a hand-and-a-half sword longer than 34 inches, you're going to end up with a long sword. You may as well just go for a full long sword. British sabers of the later periods, like the 1821 and beyond, had blades 35 inches and longer. So you're still going to end up with a blade about that long. Don't waste your time. Just grab a friggin' longsword and forget the bastard sword. It's very easy to manipulate this thing. Yeah, definitely a Briquette Saber. So I'm definitely not forging bevels on this. I've decided. Because I got it pretty thin towards the tip. Anyway. And keeping it straight is going to be a pain because the handle's going to get in the way. We'll do a little bit of straightening solid. There you have it. Turkish-ish Polish-ish shaped Briquette Saber. So let's get some measurements. You have a blade length of 25 inches, or 24.5 inches, which is about what I was aiming for. A handle length behind the guard of 5 inches, or 4 3/4 inches. So that leaves an overall length of 31 inches from tip to pommel. So yeah, definitely in the Briquette Saber range, rather than a full-size saber. So what is a Briquette Saber? A Briquette Saber was a short sword normally assigned to artillerymen and engineers, designed as a multi-use weapon, normally with a solid cast brass hilt, specifically designed to be used as a tool and a weapon. So it was kind of part machete, part sword. My marker went out? Yes, 2 drinks for the drops. I sound muffled. I may have sweated into my microphone. Testing, testing. It's the one just down point of being a fat bastard like this. Yeah, so yeah, Briquette Sabers they're some of my favorite sabers actually, because they're, you know, practical. I like them. But as far as a fighting weapon, they're not as practical. But yeah, the hilt is very much Turkish X-esque. Just in the way the hilt is wasped. So it's wider at the shoulder than it is at the base, and it's straight. On a Turkish or a Polish hilt, you would normally have langets, so you would have line either side. So yeah, 24.5 inch blade, did I say? 25? Yeah, 24.5. Fairly practical Briquette Saber size. I still have to remove some material from back here in this hump here. Got to shape this out. This is all going to get filed out and, you know, cleaned up, and then it's all going to get reforged finished. I'm not sure what I'm going to do for the hilt. I may end up just going with wood slabs, just to make it that, you know, kind of rough and ready thing. We'll see. I'm not planning on making it overly fancy. This was just a fun project to try out. I wanted to see if I could make an integral saber, and I did. But yeah, so compound distal taper indeed. So yeah, the distal taper at the moment, I don't have my calipers out here with me, but I'll just quickly take some rough eye measurements with my ruler. So at the hilt, we are 9 millimeters thick, so about 3/8 of an inch, just a little bit under 3/8 of an inch. And out by the tip, we are 4 millimeters. And somewhere in the middle, we're at 5 millimeters. So, so from this shoulder here, where it's 9, to here, it goes to 6. So from there to there, it's 6, but then from there to there, it goes down to 4. So that's a compound distal taper. And that thick beastie point is at the guard, and then it wasps down quite quickly. It will lose some more material when I grind it, because I'll do a full flat grind probably, or not a full flat, but a flat-ish grind, and I'll probably take the tip down to about 1 mil, maybe a little more, maybe 1.5 mil. But I've still got to heat treat it, obviously, so that's not going to happen soon. I'm not going to fuller it because there's a lot of weight in the handle. The handle's still very beefy. It is solid. It goes from 9 mil to about 6 mil, so it's still quite chunky, and so there's a lot of weight in the hilt, which means that the balance is going to be great. Like, it's going to be easy to handle, especially once that tip weight is removed. There's going to be almost no weight in the blade compared to the hilt, so it'll be very nimble, which will be nice. Yeah, pretty happy with that. Overall, pretty happy. Solid. Hey, Eric, you got here just in time to see the end of the stream. I will do you the service of showing you what we got. That's the balance point, by the way. Right on the guard. It's maybe a little bit forward of the guard. But yeah, there you go. That's the finished Briquette style integral saber. With our Turkish style hilt. Yeah, I'm pretty happy. So just for reference, that's the Briquette style saber. This is a cutlass with a blade of regimental length. And you can see it is quite a bit longer by about 4 or 5 inches, which is right for regulation. So yeah, the French would have called this a Briquette saber. The English would have called it a hanger. It's the same thing. And if it was issued to someone on a boat, it would be called a cutlass, even though regimental cutlasses had bowl hilts. The only difference between a hanger and a cutlass, according to period sources, is the fact that they were either on a boat or they were on the land. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed that. I did. I know it was 3 parts. I'm sorry. I will see if I can put together an edit to show the full forging process. Just take clips out of the live streams just to make it, readable, make it viewable for those people who don't want to go back and watch 6 hours worth of content of me forging this thing out. But yeah, thank you very much for sticking with me, and hope you're all staying warm if you're cool, and cool if you're warm. I'm going to go inside and sit in the aircon for a little while because I'm sweating up a storm, and I have some engraving hammers to work on now. These little guys, they are faceted, linseed oiled now. We're going to take a wire wheel to them, take off the excess, and then polish the faces up and put a handle on them, and those will be part of the graving kits that I have. I've also got to sharpen 40 gravers this afternoon, so that's probably what I'll be doing for the rest of the day. But yeah, so hope you all have a fantastic night, day, wherever you are. I will have another video out for you on Wednesday, another Chalk Talk. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves, and I will see you soon. Bye, guys.